Brass Knuckle Alpha by Morgan Black. Copyright 2025 by Morgan Black. All rights reserved. The story, all names, characters, and incidents portrayed in this production are fictitious. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, places, buildings, and products is intended or should be inferred. Please follow me on Amazon. Join Patreon to gain access to my uncensored audiobooks.
Chapter 1. Lex. The basement was a cold, uninviting expanse of concrete, with a low ceiling crisscrossed by exposed pipes painted in a dull black that seemed to absorb the scant light. Bare bulbs dangled from chains, their dim glow swaying gently whenever footsteps reverberated from above, casting shifting, ghostly patterns of light across the makeshift ring, which was just a mere patch of duct tape marking its boundaries on the stained concrete floor. The air was thick with the pungent scent of sweat, the metallic tang of blood, and the stale, lingering aroma of beer wafting down from the bar situated above, creating an atmosphere that was both oppressive and intoxicating. But what the betas in the crowd couldn't detect was the overwhelming stench of alpha pheromones of aggression, dominance, and raw power soaking into the very air around us. It was a miasma that had built up over years of alpha fighters spilling blood and unleashing their primal nature in this pit. To me, it smelled like home. A home I hated, but still home. I flexed my taped fists, feeling the familiar ache in my knuckles as I circled my opponent. Around us, 3 deep, stood a wall of men in work clothes and expensive watches alike, their faces flushed with alcohol and the greedy excitement of seeing 2 alphas pound each other's faces in. The sound reverberated off the concrete walls, swearing, shouted bets, the smack of bills being traded. Who would rise? Or more importantly, who would fall? Tonight, it wouldn't be me. Across from me, Vega bounced on his toes, trying to look fresh. I caught the slight tremor in his left leg. He'd been fighting too long tonight, taking on 2 opponents before me. A mistake. The boss had set him up to fail. That's what usually happened to fighters who didn't take the fall willingly. They were gonna fail one way or another. His pheromones tinged with the sour notes of exhaustion and the metallic edge of fear. My own alpha instincts registered his weakness, urging me to move in for the kill. I pushed those urges down. Control was what separated me from the other alpha fighters, who burned bright and faded fast. "Come on, pretty boy," he spat, raising his fists higher. "Don't dance all night." I didn't respond. Words were wasted energy. I'd learned that lesson years ago in juvie, where talking just identified you as a target. My silence unsettled him more than any trash talk could. Vega lunged, telegraphing a right hook that I slipped past. I countered with a body shot that connected under his ribs. Not full power, not yet. Just enough to remind him who controlled this fight. The crowd's cheers engulfed me, just a jumble of sounds. But I wasn't fighting in this shithole for their sake. I was fighting for Kenzo, who stood in the corner, arms crossed over his expensive silk shirt and looking like he just stepped out of a 70s disco or some old gangster movie. A beta with enough cunning to control a stable of alphas. Trust me when I say that was rare. He'd picked me up 6 years ago when I was sleeping in my car, fighting for $50 in bars, one step from being another statistic. Now, I was his most reliable investment. "Finish this shit, Hammer," someone yelled from the crowd. Vega charged at me once more, his desperation causing him to be careless. I allowed him to hit my shoulder, feeling the impact transform into energy I could harness. Pain had always been a source of power for me. I'd grown up with my uncle's backhand as a daily reminder that I was unwanted. Being the only alpha in a family of betas had made me a target from the beginning, feared and resented before I even understood what I was. The state thought they were doing me a favor after my mom died by forcing me to live with him over going through the system. But all they did was trade one kind of piece of shit for another. It wasn't until I was 14 that I towered over him, as if my body forced me to get as big as possible so I could fight that fucker back. One punch to his ugly mug sent him flying into the kitchen while he was mid-sentence into telling me how worthless I was. He never hit me again. Instead, when I returned home from school, my shit was sitting outside for the trash man, and the locks were changed. Coward wasn't even home to tell me with his own words that I should get out. The ache in my knuckles now was different. A pain I chose. Something I controlled. Vega was breathing hard, mouth open. I moved in, feinted low, then connected with an uppercut that snapped his head back. Before he could recover, I followed with a hook to his temple. His eyes glazed. One more would do it. I hesitated just for a fraction of a second, something I rarely did. In that microscopic pause, I wondered what I was doing here at 28, spilling blood for other men's entertainment and profit. The moment cost me. Vega recovered enough to land a lucky shot to my eyebrow. I felt the skin split, warm blood trickling into my eye. The pain cleared my head. I stepped in close, blocked his hopeless swing, and delivered 3 quick shots to his ribs. When his hands dropped to protect his body, I brought a final right cross to his jaw. The sound was unmistakable, not quite a crack, but the dull thud of Vega folding to the concrete floor. The crowd erupted, money changing hands, curses and cheers mingling. I stood over my fallen opponent, but felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a familiar emptiness that no amount of winning seemed to fill. As Vega was dragged away, I caught an unfamiliar scent, something clean and clinical that cut through the alpha musk and blood that saturated the air. It was faint, but distinctive, like nothing I'd encountered in this basement before. Something about it made my alpha instincts stir in a way that had nothing to do with fighting. Kenzo approached, slapping my shoulder with a manicured hand. "Clean work, Hammer, though you took your sweet time." I wiped blood from my eye. "The crowd gets a better show that way." He laughed, but his eyes remained cold. "Always thinking of business, eh? That's why you're my favorite." It wasn't a compliment. I was just another fighting dog in his kennel, and even masters had favorites. "Get cleaned up." He glanced at my bleeding eyebrow. "Doc Martin's out. His wife finally had enough of his night job. Got someone new patching up the fighters." "I don't need a doctor." The cut wasn't deep. I'd had worse shaving. "New rule. All fighters get checked after matches. Boss's orders." Kenzo lowered his voice. "We had that incident last month. Can't have fighters dying of internal bleeding. Bad for business." He meant Rodriguez, who'd collapsed in the parking lot after taking a beating from 3 consecutive opponents. The rumor was he'd died before reaching the hospital. "Fine." I grabbed my shirt from the chair in my corner, wiping my face with it. No point keeping it clean. Kenzo was already moving on to the next fight, waving in 2 heavyweights who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the hands that patted my back and shoulders. These people weren't friends. They were just betting on human cockfights, treating fighters like gambling chips with pulses. They loved me 'cause I won. If or when I lose, those pats would become spitting and cursing. The back room was little more than a storage closet with a folding table and some basic medical supplies. A small, grimy window high on the wall let in meager light from the alleyway behind the building. I sat on the edge of the table, suddenly aware of the various pains lighting up across my body. My knuckles throbbed, despite the tape. My ribs ached from a shot I'd taken in last week's fight. The cut over my eye stung, blood still seeping. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar post-fight crash. The adrenaline ebbing away, leaving me hollow. Fighting was the only time I felt truly alive. That perfect moment when nothing existed except movement and instinct. But that moment never lasted, and the aftermath left me emptier than before. I heard the door open but didn't bother looking up. "You must be Hammer. I need to take a look at that cut." The voice made me open my eyes. It wasn't what I expected. No gruffness, no weariness. Clear, steady, educated, though with an underlying tension that caught my attention. I looked up to see a man I wouldn't have expected in this hellhole, a beautifully handsome bastard, with blonde hair, red lips, and sharp features, and gray eyes that belonged Well, any fucking place else but here. Certainly not this basement butcher shop. He was sweating more than the stuffy room warranted, a fine sheen visible on his forehead, and I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his medical supplies. Then it hit me. That scent I'd caught earlier. Stronger now in this confined space. Clean and clinical on the surface like antiseptic, soap, a subtle cologne. But underneath, something else entirely. Something sweet and forbidden. Something unmistakable to any alpha's senses. Omega. The realization jolted through me like an electric current. An Omega here, in this alpha-dominated pit of violence? Trying to mask his scent with suppressants that were clearly failing him now, in this small room with nowhere for the pheromones to disperse. There's no way this man belonged here. Where the hell did Kenzo get this guy from? And how desperate or crazy was he to walk into a basement full of amped-up alpha fighters?
"I'm Jamie Ward, the new medic,"
he said, voice steady despite the way his pulse visibly fluttered at his throat.
Chapter 2. Jamie. My latex gloves snapped against my wrists as I pulled them on, the sound unnervingly loud in the small room. My hands were steady, but it took every ounce of my training to keep them that way. The makeshift medical room was little more than a storage closet, with cinder block walls painted an institutional green that had yellowed with age. A folding metal table served as an examination surface. The overhead lights flickered, casting irregular shadows on the medical supplies I'd arranged on a rusty rolling cart. I'd been here for 3 hours, but it felt like days. 5 fighters had already passed through, each carrying their wounds like badges. None had impressed me with their intelligence or willingness to talk. Certainly none had caught my interest beyond what information they might provide, and none had made my suppressants feel suddenly inadequate. Just one more, I muttered to myself, checking my watch. Nearly 1 a.m. The city above us slept while alphas hammered each other into unconsciousness below. A year of investigating and 3 weeks of being undercover, and I still had nothing concrete on the organization running these fights. Just rumors, whispers, and enough circumstantial evidence to know I was in the right place. Somewhere in this basement was the proof I needed to connect these underground matches to the money laundering operation upstairs. I took a deep, steadying breath, immediately regretting it as my senses were flooded with the overwhelming stench of alpha pheromones. It was like walking through a cloud of testosterone and aggression. Even with my military-grade suppressants, the ones that kept me registered as a beta on every department physical, the smell was making my head swim, and I almost doubled over when I heard the footsteps approach. The door swung open without a knock. I turned, maintaining the careful neutral expression I'd practiced in the mirror. The man who entered made me forget my training for a dangerous second, or possibly a minute. He filled the doorframe, 6 feet plus of solid muscle. Dark hair cropped close at the sides but longer on top, now matted with sweat. His face was all sharp angles, with a strong jaw darkened by stubble. Blood trickled from a cut above his right eyebrow, running in a crimson line down to his cheekbone. But it was his scent that truly caught me off guard. Pure, undiluted, alpha, powerful, and primal, but with none of the artificial aggression enhancers the other fighters reeked of. There was something raw and honest about it, earth and steel, and something uniquely his, cutting through everything else. Even through my suppressants, it hit me like a physical blow. I felt a dangerous warmth begin to pool low in my abdomen, and my hole felt slick. My suppressants should have prevented this, as they'd never failed me before, not in locker rooms or training facilities full of alphas. But something about this particular fighter was more different. His eyes were deep brown and intelligent, observing me with an intensity that felt like being physically touched. They didn't match the brutality of his occupation, and when they locked with mine, I felt a jolt of recognition that had nothing to do with having seen him before. He wore nothing but fight shorts and hand wraps, his chest and shoulders glistening with sweat under the harsh light. A tapestry of old scars and fresh bruises marked his skin. Professional fighters in regulated bouts didn't look like this. This was the body of someone who fought without rules or mercy. "You must be Hammer," I said, recovering my professional demeanor with effort. I need to take a look at that cut. He studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment before answering.
Nobody calls me hammer to my face unless they're placing bets.
His voice was lower than I expected, with a roughness that suggested it wasn't often used. The sound vibrated through me in a way that made maintaining my composure even more difficult. "What should I call you then?" I asked, gesturing to the table, willing my hand not to tremble.
Lex.
He moved past me, bringing with him the sharp tang of fresh sweat, heat and masculinity, and the faint copper note of blood. It wasn't the antiseptic cleanliness of a hospital or the artificial scent of cologne. This was raw, human, and undeniably alpha. Up close, I could see the mottled bruising along his ribs, yellows and purples suggesting injuries from previous fights layered beneath tonight's damage. My Omega instincts, which I had kept at bay for years with medication and determination, began to awaken. The urge to care for him, to tend his wounds with more than professional interest, was almost overwhelming. I had to remind myself why I was here, justice for Michael, my brother, evidence against Milano, not to fall prey to instincts I'd spent my entire career denying. Stupid Omega genes. He perched casually on the edge of the table, his biceps flexing subtly beneath the intricate tattoos that adorned his arms. I couldn't help but notice the way the designs moved with him, creating a mesmerizing dance across his skin. An unexpected surge of attraction coursed through me, catching me off guard. I quickly forced myself to look away, reminding myself sternly that letting these feelings surface would endanger everything I had worked for. "I'm Jamie Ward, the new medic." I focused on the cut above his eye, avoiding those perceptive brown eyes. "This needs cleaning and possibly a stitch or two."
Just slap a butterfly on it. I've had worse.
"I'm sure you have. I prepared an antiseptic wipe. But infection in a facial wound isn't something to mess around with." As I stepped closer, I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. My training was in emergency medicine, but this felt more intimate than any ER treatment I'd performed. The small room amplified his presence, his scent surrounding me completely. I focused on my breathing, on maintaining the steady hands that had seen me through medical school and police training. "This will sting," I warned, cleaning the blood away. He didn't flinch. Most men would at least tense up. His control was remarkable, almost unnatural.
You're not like the last medic,
he said, watching me work. "How so?" I kept my tone casual, though my pulse quickened. Had he somehow sensed what I was, despite the suppressants?
Your hands. They know what they're doing.
His gaze moved from my hands to my face.
And you don't smell like cheap whiskey.
I smiled despite myself. I saved the drinking for after work.
Smart.
He continued studying me as I cleaned the wound. Then he said something that threw me totally off guard.
You don't belong here.
The observation struck too close to the truth. I reached for the butterfly bandages, needing a moment to compose a response. A bead of sweat trickled down my spine, and I prayed to God that he wouldn't notice the slight tremble in my fingers, or how wet he was making me. "It's just a job," I said finally. "Pays better than the clinic."
Bullshit.
I looked up, startled by the flat contradiction.
Your shoes cost more than most guys here make in a week. Your watch is subtle but expensive. You're not here for the money.
My heart rate spiked. I hadn't expected to be read so easily by a fighter. Maybe I like the excitement. That earned me a small curl of his lips, not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it.
Now that's interesting.
He leaned forward slightly, reducing the space between us. His scent intensified, and I felt a wave of heat wash over me.
What kind of excitement are you looking for, Doc?
The question carried an unmistakable undercurrent. It wasn't just flirtation, it was assessment. He was trying to figure me out, just as I was trying to figure him out. The symmetry of our mutual suspicion added a charge to the air that felt dangerous and compelling. I prepared the suture and began stitching the wound as fast as my fingers could fly. All kinds. The words came out more suggestive than I'd intended. His eyes grew intense, and for a brief moment we both remained still. The basement fights, my mission, the organization, everything seemed to fade away, overshadowed by the magnetic tension between us. I broke away first, moving to check the bruising on his ribs. My fingers pressed against his skin, feeling for any sign of fractures. His breathing changed subtly under my touch. The warmth of his skin against my fingertips sent a dangerous signal to parts of my body I'd trained to ignore. Parts that were now responding despite the suppressants that should have kept me safely in beta territory. Any trouble breathing? Sharp pain when you inhale deeply? I kept my voice clinical despite the electricity racing through my fingertips.
No.
Try taking a deep breath for me. He complied, his chest expanding under my hands. I noticed a long scar running across his left side, the tissue raised and uneven. This wasn't from fighting, I observed without thinking.
Knife. Long time ago.
His eyes searched mine.
You've seen knife wounds before.
It wasn't a question. Something in my reaction had given me away. In the ER, you see all kinds of everything, I said, redirecting. You should ice these ribs, 20 minutes on, 20 off.
Sure, Doc.
The way he said it told me he had no intention of following my advice. I stepped back, stripping off my gloves. Anything else I should look at? He stood, bringing our faces closer than was professionally necessary. The full impact of his height and presence hit me again. His scent enveloped me, and I felt my body responding in ways that terrified me. A dangerous warmth was spreading through my lower abdomen, the first warning signs of what should be impossible, the beginning of heat.
Not tonight.
The implication hung in the air between us. I should have maintained distance, should have kept the boundaries clear. Instead, I found myself saying, I don't plan to quit this job anytime soon, so you can always find me here.
See you Friday then, Doc.
He moved past me toward the door, his arm brushing mine in the small space. Why the hell did I say that? Did I just give him an invitation? And to what? The door clicked shut behind him and I exhaled deeply, feeling the tension unwind from my shoulders. My knees felt weak, and I gripped the edge of the metal table to steady myself. I pulled my emergency suppressant injector from my medical bag. The dosage was twice what was medically recommended, but I couldn't risk any signs of Omega biology breaking through. Not here, not now. Not with a case this important. I refused to be found out and kicked off the case and the force. As the extra suppressants flooded my system, I leaned against the metal table, my mind racing. The attraction was unexpected and unwelcome. It complicated everything. I'd come here to gather evidence, not to develop feelings for a fighter who was, at best, adjacent to criminal activity, and, at worst, complicit in it. I pulled out my phone, needing to document the night's observations while they were fresh. But as I began typing, I found myself thinking not of the organization or the evidence, but of brown eyes that saw too much, and a body marked by violence but moving with unexpected grace. I deleted what I'd written and started again, forcing myself to focus on facts, not feelings. The operation was too important to jeopardize for a momentary attraction, no matter how intense. But as I finished my notes, I couldn't help but add one last observation. Subject Lex, Hammer. Potential source. More intelligent than the others. Worth further contact. I stared at those words, knowing they were true while also knowing my interest wasn't entirely professional. Next Friday, suddenly felt both too far away and not far enough. Suddenly felt both too far away and not far enough.
Chapter 3. Lex. 3 days and I still couldn't get him out of my head. The new medic with careful hands, who looked wholly out of place in this filthy, grimy shithole. The Omega trying so desperately to hide what he was. Don't get me wrong, I've seen pretty people before coming in here with their suits and expensive watches. But they looked like any well-to-do fuck in here. This doc was everything they weren't. Hell, everything I wasn't. I could tell just by looking at him. Clean, educated, in control of his own life. The kind of man who had choices I'd never been offered. The kind of man who walked through this dirty underworld without getting stained by it. And an Omega, an actual Omega in the middle of alpha fighting territory. Thinking about him awakened a protective instinct in me that I had never experienced before. Alphas weren't supposed to care about strangers, especially ones they'd only met once. We were supposed to be selfish, aggressive, territorial. And I was all those things. But something about that Omega, about Jamie, made me want to shield him from this world even as I wondered what the hell he was doing in it. I'd been with men before. Quick encounters after fights in cities where nobody knew my name. Nothing that lasted beyond morning. Nothing that mattered. And most certainly, none of them were Omegas. In the fighting circuit, I kept that part of myself quiet. Not because I was ashamed, but because any vulnerability became a weapon in the wrong hands. And in this world, most hands were the wrong ones. I wrapped my knuckles slowly, the familiar ritual usually centering me before a fight. Tonight, my mind kept drifting. The locker room stank of mildew and cheap disinfectant and alpha aggression. The concrete walls were lined with metal lockers, most dented, some missing doors entirely. A wooden bench ran down the center, scarred with cigarette burns and knife marks from fighters too amped up to sit still. "You good, Hammer?" Denny asked from the doorway. He was Kenzo's right-hand man, all neck tattoos and gold teeth. A beta who'd failed as a fighter but found his calling collecting debts instead. "Always," I said, not looking up from my raps. "You better be. Boss has money on you tonight. 3-round minimum." Great. That meant I was supposed to make it look good, drag out the fight even if I could end it earlier. The crowd bet more when they saw blood. "Who am I fighting?" I asked, though I already knew. I'd seen the lineup. "Machado." I nodded. Jose Machado was bigger than me, younger but greener, an alpha who relied on power over technique. On a normal night, I'd wear him down, strike when he got frustrated. Easy work. But tonight didn't feel normal. I felt off balance, distracted. Because of him, because of that doc, that Omega. Something about him wasn't right even if our exchange was brief. What would a guy like him be doing here? An Omega among alphas, like a lamb walking into a wolf den. I finished wrapping my hands and stood. The basement room felt smaller than usual, the ceiling lower. I rolled my shoulders, trying to focus my mind on the fight ahead. The corridor leading to the pit was narrow, the walls close enough to touch with outstretched arms. Music throbbed through the floorboards above. Friday crowds were bigger, rowdier, more money changing hands. I spotted him immediately when I entered the main room. The doc stood near the back. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, but somehow looked like he'd walked out of another world. Too clean for this place, too intact. His scent was more controlled tonight, the suppressants working overtime to mask his Omega biology. But my alpha senses picked it up anyway, cutting through the cloud of testosterone and aggression that filled the room. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded slightly, professional. But something passed between us, a current that made my skin tighten. I forced myself to look away, focusing on the makeshift ring. The tape outline on the floor had been refreshed, bright blue against the stained concrete. The overhead lights seemed harsher tonight, creating deep shadows in the corners where Kenzo's men watched for trouble or cheaters. Machado was already in the ring, bouncing on his toes. He was built like a heavyweight boxer, thick through the chest and arms. His shaved head gleamed under the lights. His alpha pheromones were strong but crude, pumped up with synthetic enhancers that gave off a chemical undertone. A fighter who relied on brute biology rather than skill. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the basement. "Our main event tonight. 3 rounds, no holds barred." I tuned out the rest, stepping into the ring. Normally, this was where everything else fell away, where my mind cleared and instinct took over. Instead, I was aware of the doc watching from the back of the room. I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. Another alpha getting paid to bleed? A lost cause? Or something worth saving? The thought made me uncomfortable. I didn't need saving, didn't deserve it either. Men like the doc fixed broken things. I was broken in ways no one could repair and didn't even want repaired. The damage was part of me now. The bell rang. Machado came at me fast, looking for an early knockout. I slipped his first punch, countered with a jab to create distance. Basic stuff. But when I should have followed up, I hesitated, my eyes flickering to the back of the room. That momentary distraction cost me. Machado's right hook caught me on the jaw, snapping my head sideways. Pain bloomed bright and clarifying. Pay attention, asshole. I regained my focus and moved to avoid his dominant side. The crowd's noise became a distant hum, irrelevant. For those 2 minutes, I found my rhythm again, exchanging hits with precision and choosing my opportunities carefully. I executed a strong combination that forced Machado to retreat, his eye starting to swell. Then I saw the doc move closer to the ring, his expression intent, studying, not just watching the fight, but watching me specifically. His scent spiked momentarily, a sweet, enticing burst of omega pheromones that hit me like a jolt of electricity. My alpha brain registered it immediately. Attraction, interest, concern. He was affected by watching me fight. The realization was so unexpected that it broke my concentration completely. Machado seized the opportunity. His fist connected with my ribs, the same spot that was already bruised from last week. The pain was immediate and stunning. I staggered back, nearly going down. "What the fuck are you doing?" Kenzo shouted from the corner. Good question. I never got distracted in fights. Never. The first round ended. I returned to my corner, where Denny waited with water and a scowl. "You trying to lose?" he hissed. "Get your head in the game or Kenzo will have your ass." I nodded, taking the water. Over Denny's shoulder, I could see the doc watching, his brow furrowed with concern or concentration. I couldn't tell which. The bell chimed for round 2. Machado had found confidence after that last shot. He pressed forward aggressively, throwing heavy combinations. I defended better this time, keeping my focus locked on him rather than the crowd. When he overextended, I countered, landing a clean shot to his temple that made him wobble. The crowd roared. I caught a glimpse of Kenzo nodding approvingly. 3-round minimum. Make it look good. But my ribs screamed with every breath. Machado had done real damage with that shot. I circled, buying time, letting him burn energy chasing me. When he lunged again, I sidestepped and delivered a short hook to his kidney. He grunted in pain, but didn't slow down. His next punch grazed my cheek, reopening the cut from my last fight. Warm blood trickled down my face. I tasted copper when I inhaled. The second round ended with both of us breathing hard. Blood dripped onto the concrete at my feet, creating tiny dark pools that would join the countless others soaked into this floor. "Come on," Denny reminded me. "Put him down." I nodded, though the pain in my side suggested that might be easier said than done. My ribs felt worse than just bruised. Each breath was a knife between my ribs. The final round began. Machado and I circled each other, both showing damage now. His left eye was nearly closed. Blood ran from his nose, smeared across his face when he wiped it with his forearm. I kept my guard high, protecting my head. I needed to end this. Machado threw a wild haymaker. I ducked under it and drove forward, ignoring the fire in my side to deliver 3 quick body shots followed by an uppercut that rocked his head back. He stumbled, momentarily dazed. "Finish it." I stepped in, ready to deliver the final blow, when a sharp, searing pain tore through my side. Not just bruised ribs, something worse. Machado recovered, seeing my moment of weakness. His fist connected with my temple, sending me sprawling onto the concrete. The room spun. The referee began counting. I pushed onto my hands and knees, then forced myself upright before he reached 8. The crowd went wild, loving the drama. Machado rushed in for the finish. Pure instinct took over. I slipped his punch, pivoted, and delivered a right cross with everything I had left. My fist connected with his jaw with a sound like a bat hitting a home run. He dropped. The count reached 10. It was over. I stood in the center of the ring, victorious but hurting in a way that went beyond normal post-fight pain. My vision blurred at the edges. Something was wrong with my ribs. Kenzo appeared at my side, all smiles for the crowd. "Good show," he muttered. "Get cleaned up." I nodded, moving stiffly toward the back room. Halfway there, my legs nearly gave out. A hand gripped my elbow, steadying me.
I've got you.
Jamie said, his voice low.
Keep walking.
His support was subtle enough not to look like weakness to the crowd. But the moment his hand touched my skin, something electric passed between us. His scent enveloped me, stronger than before, the suppressants failing under stress or emotion. The sweet, enticing smell of Omega, of him, cut through the pain momentarily. I let him guide me to the medical room, the pain in my side sharpening with each step. The door closed behind us, shutting out the noise of the crowd. His eyes met mine, pupils dilated.
Lex.
The way he said my name was a plea or a warning. Maybe both. Before I could respond, he released me and tried to push back. Putting distance between us like that might help. But it was too late. My presence overwhelmed him as his suppressants failed completely. His scent changed rapidly from subtle to intense, sweet, enticing, utterly Omega. Desire hit me like a punch in the gut, more powerful than pain, more urgent than injury. My instincts tumbled forward to claim him.
I didn't want this to happen here.
Jamie stammered, backing into the wall. But he couldn't tear his eyes from me. I stood slowly, every movement sending agony through my ribs, but ignoring it all in favor of what mattered more. Him. Jamie, I growled softly. His cheeks were flushed deep red now, breaths quick and shallow as he slid down against the wall in surrender or desperation. I crossed the space between us in 2 strides. The moment I touched his face, feeling heat radiating off his skin, his entire body shivered beneath my hands.
I can't control it.
He gasped out. I kissed him hard enough to make us both forget everything else but this. Everything else but this. Chapter 5. Lex. Jamie lay sprawled across me, body limp and soft with sleep. At some point, I'd rolled us over to get his weight off my chest, but he stayed impaled on my cock, even in his dreams. Hours since the knot had gone down, and we were still tangled together in a mess of skin and sweat. I eased him off me slowly, my length slipping out at last. A flood of cum followed, spilling lazily from him onto my stomach. It dripped thickly, and I knew there was even more inside him. Hell, I might have even knocked him up. The thought made something primal stir in me again, but it was too soon to tell. Reality crept back in like a slow poison, and I suddenly realized the extent of my mistake. My world wasn't meant for this kind of connection. Dangerous didn't begin to cover it. He belonged far away from here, away from what I couldn't keep out of my life. I froze when I noticed the door. It wasn't shut tight like I thought. Had we forgotten to close it? Or had someone seen us? If another alpha had seen us, it would have meant blood until one of us was dead, which meant it could have been a beta, or worse, Kenzo. The mere idea of him knowing turned my stomach cold. In this place, any information could be a death sentence if used right or wrong, and Kenzo loved holding all the cards. Yet here I was with Jamie curled against me, breathing softly like none of that mattered at all. I shifted carefully, easing out from under Jamie's warmth, and padded to the door. It swung on its hinges when I touched it, confirming my worst suspicions. Cursing under my breath, I locked it tight this time and crossed the dim, cluttered room to grab a stack of towels. Jamie murmured something incoherent in his sleep and turned onto his stomach, exposing the full mess I made of him. The sight was both satisfying and terrifying. I wet one of the towels under the tap and returned to where he lay, sprawled across tangled sheets. His skin glistened with drying sweat and fluids, the evidence of what we'd done all over him, soaking into his scent. As gently as I could, I cleaned him off. My touch traced over places I'd bitten, licked, kissed, all places that screamed ownership. Another alpha would rip us apart to have him now that he was marked. I should have thought about all this before I'd gone and claimed him. But then, I lost control of myself, and it was all instinct. When I was inside of him, it was like nothing else mattered, and the choice had been made for me. Hill, I didn't even know him, and now we were bound together until one or both of us were dead. I tossed the wash towel aside and wrapped another larger one around his body before slipping on my boxers. I needed to get to the locker room and get my clothes and keys, but I was reluctant to leave him in this place alone, looking and smelling the way he was. My scent was blending into his. Soon every alpha who smelled him would know he was mine, and he would lose the ability to control his own scent. No suppressant was a match for an alpha's mark. The clock blinked 3 a.m. at me from across the room. It was late enough that most everyone would be passed out or gone home. This would be our best chance to slip away unnoticed. I picked Jamie up carefully, feeling him settle into me as I moved, like he belonged there, against every reason why he shouldn't. The plan was to get him to the car without anyone noticing, and then fetch my clothes and keys. I carried him across the empty hall, through the back door, and out into the parking lot. It was mostly dark except for a few flickering lights. My truck stood hunched in the corner, beat up and reliable like always. Barely anyone else was parked out there now. Shoving aside the mess in the passenger seat, I eased Jamie down, locking the door behind him. He shifted but didn't wake. My breath came easier, knowing he was safe there while I ran back inside. The locker room smelled like sweat and beer, but it was quiet. My clothes were where I'd left them, tossed in a heap on one of the benches. I pulled on a tank top and gym pants, grabbed my keys, and headed out. Halfway across the parking lot, I saw Denny leaning against my truck. He spotted me and laughed before walking away. Then everything spiraled out of control. Jamie got out of the truck, unsteady but determined, my gun that I kept in the glove compartment clutched in his shaking hands. "Jamie!" I shouted as he raised it toward Denny's back. "Stop!" The crack of the shot echoed before I could reach them. Denny staggered back, shock on his face as he crumpled to the ground, clutching his side. There was too much blood already. I tore the gun from Jamie's grip. His words were a jumble.
He knew. I had to do it. Can't lose this job.
Then an old voice cut through the chaos, Frankie, the bar owner who'd been around longer than Sin itself, noticing us from across the lot. "Get the fuck back in." I snapped at Jamie, throwing him back into the truck with more force than I'd meant to use. He landed hard in the passenger seat as I rushed into the driver's seat and gunned it out of there, tires screeching against asphalt. I didn't know if Denny was dead or alive, but he'd be trouble either way if we didn't get far away fast enough. "What the fuck was that?" I yelled as I sped down the street. "What the fuck did you do?"
Oh God, I fucked up.
"Damn right you did. Why did you do that?" I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching as we swerved into the lot of my apartment building. The place was half gutted already, windows boarded up and tagged with spray paint. Jamie shivered in the passenger seat, still wrapped in that towel, eyes wide with panic. "Come on," I said, yanking my door open. He trailed after me, clutching the towel tightly around himself like some flimsy shield against the night and everything else. Inside was worse than out. The stairwell reeked of piss and smoke. I took 2 steps at a time up to the second floor, Jamie silent, but close behind. This was probably a far cry from whatever he was used to. I unlocked my apartment door and shoved it open. He slipped past me, collapsing onto the threadbare couch. "Why'd you shoot Denny?" I demanded, slamming the door shut behind us. Jamie's voice came out cracked and thin.
He saw us having sex. He knows I'm an Omega.
"Then you could have quit."
You don't understand. I can't just quit. I'm going to lose everything.
"Just calm down," I said, heading to the kitchen to get him some water. I filled a glass from the sink, came back and shoved it into his hands. "Why's this job so important?" I asked. "It's just fixing up underground fighters." His fingers shook on the glass.
You don't understand.
"So help me out," I said, sitting across from him. "You in some kind of debt?"
No?
I could tell he was holding back. "We're bonded for life now, Jamie. Whatever debts or problems you have are mine too." He looked miserable.
And that's a problem.
"What's that supposed to mean?"
You have no idea how screwed I am.
He set the water down, barely touched.
Why did you claim me? You never should have done that.
I walked back to the kitchen, mostly to keep from yelling. "You think I planned this?" You were there too. We both lost control tonight,
I wasn't supposed to lose control.
he said. His voice was small, and it pissed me off more than if he'd shouted. I turned to face him, trying to rein in my temper. Look, I'm sorry, all right? I'll make this right for you. I swear, I'll protect you. He gripped the towel tighter around his body.
You can't protect me from losing my job.
I'll take care of you, I promised. We're bonded now, whether you like it or not. But you've got to meet me halfway here. Help me figure out what we're dealing with. Jamie stared at me for a long moment, eyes dark like storm clouds about to break.
This is all a mess,
He finally said. I closed the distance between us and sank down onto the floor across from him, feeling every inch of how worn out and raw we both were. We'll figure it out, I said, one step at a time, starting with you trusting me enough to tell me what's going on.
You don't even know me.
He shook his head like he couldn't believe this was happening. Then let's change that.
It wasn't supposed to happen like this.
Then how? I asked, needing to understand why he was making this so hard.
I never wanted a lover,
He said quietly, almost like it hurt to say.
much less an alpha.
It felt like a gut punch, but at least now I knew where we stood. Well, I forced a half smile, trying for something lighter than everything hanging between us. You got both. He didn't smile back.
I need time to think.
Jamie finally said, curling up away from me on the couch. I watched him close his eyes and tried not to feel like we were already losing this fight before it had started.
Chapter 6. Jamie. I woke with a start, disoriented in the unfamiliar bed. Sunlight filtered through blinds I didn't recognize, casting bars of gold across the sheets tangled around my legs. The mattress was firmer than mine, the pillows fewer. For one panicked moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then his scent hit me, and everything rushed back. Lex. The medical room. Our bodies colliding with unstoppable force. His teeth at my neck. My hand flew to the mark, feeling the tender, slightly raised skin where he'd claimed me. A bond mark. Permanent and unmistakable to any Alpha or Omega who caught sight of it. I was a marked Omega now. My carefully constructed life. My career. My identity as a Beta on the Force. My independence. All of it jeopardized in a single moment of biological imperative. The bed beside me was empty, the sheets cool. I sat up, wincing at the soreness that radiated through my body. Pleasant soreness, my Omega biology supplied unhelpfully. The kind that came from being thoroughly claimed by an Alpha. Shit, I muttered, scrubbing a hand over my face. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I slid from the bed, acutely aware of my nakedness, and grabbed the first piece of clothing I found, Lex's discarded t-shirt. It smelled like him, earth and steel and alpha musk. I pulled it over my head, allowing myself a moment of weakness as I inhaled his scent. The main room was dim, blinds closed against the morning sun. It took my eyes a moment to adjust, to make out the form sprawled on the too small couch. Lex slept with one arm thrown over his face, the other dangling toward the floor. He'd given me his bed without a word. The gesture struck me as unexpectedly considerate for a man who made his living with violence. I should have felt relief that he wasn't boxing me in, wasn't playing the possessive alpha stereotype. Instead, I felt a troubling sense of rejection. The Omega in me wanted him close, wanted the security of his arms, his scent, his presence. The rational part of me, the detective part, knew this distance was safer. My suppressants were in my bag by the door. I moved quietly toward them, knowing they would be all but useless now. No chemical compound could mask a fresh bond, the mingled sense of alpha and omega that announced our mating to the world. I might as well wear a sign declaring my deception to every alpha I encountered, including Captain Reeves. The thought of my commanding officer sent a chill through me. In 2 hours, I was due at the precinct to report on my undercover progress. He would know in a heartbeat what I truly was now. What would I say? I lied for years? That I'd compromised myself completely? That I'd allowed my Omega biology to overcome years of training and discipline? My clothes from last night were nowhere to be found. I vaguely remembered them being torn in our frenzy. I'd have to wear Lex's shirt home, then change before heading to the precinct. As I gathered my things, I glanced back at Lex, studying him in sleep. He looked younger, the perpetual tension in his face relaxed. Without the hardness in his eyes, he could have been anyone, a construction worker, a mechanic, a man with an ordinary life. Not a fighter in an underground ring, not a man tied to the criminal organization I was investigating. The thought was like cold water. I was bonded to a man who might be involved in the very crimes I was trying to solve. Even if he wasn't directly implicated, his connection to Kenzo made him adjacent to Milano's operation. Any evidence I gathered that involved him would now be considered compromised. If Lex was innocent, would my report be believed? Would my judgment be dismissed as an Omega defending their Alpha? If he was guilty, then would I then become an Omega who was planting evidence to get rid of the Alpha they no longer wanted? Either way, the case I'd worked so hard to build was now tainted by my biology. And then, there was Denny. God, I'd shot Denny. What the hell was I going to do about that? I should report the incident, but then I would for sure be thrown off the force unless I lie. But that's corruption. I felt like I was spiraling. Part of me wanted to wake Lex, to fall into his strength and let him handle the world outside. The Omega in me craved that surrender. But I'd spent my entire adult life fighting those instincts. I wouldn't give in now. Not when everything I'd worked for hung in the balance. I scribbled a quick note, "Had to go, we'll see you later," and placed it on the coffee table where he'd see it when he woke. Then I slipped out, closing the door quietly behind me. The morning air was cool against my bare legs as I hurriedly scurried away. I had to take the subway home. Hopefully everyone sees me as some crazed homeless guy and leave me alone. I tried to organize my thoughts, to formulate a plan. Most of all, I needed to regain control of a situation that had spiraled far beyond my careful planning. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd settled on a course of action. Shower thoroughly, dress in my most professional clothes. Apply a scent-neutralizing spray. Wear a high-collared shirt to hide the mark. Report only the facts relevant to the investigation, omitting personal details. If Reeves catches on, then I come clean about what I am, but omit everything else, or lie. Simple, clinical, professional. I could do this, I had to do this. For Michael, for justice, for the career I'd sacrificed everything to build, even if it meant deceiving everyone, even Lex. The thought made my newly marked bond throb with protest, a physical manifestation of my divided loyalties. I ignored it, just as I'd been ignoring my Omega nature for years. "What exactly is your interest in this fighter?" Captain Reeves asked, leaning back in his chair. The precinct office was quiet this early in the morning, most desks still empty. Coffee-stained papers cluttered his desk. Evidence of too many late nights. I kept my expression neutral, fighting the instinct to touch the concealed mark on my neck. "He's connected to Kenzo, who's connected to Milano. The chain leads up. He might be a good informant if I can get him to talk." "You've been undercover 3 weeks now. Got anything solid?" Reeves drummed his fingers on the desk, his eyes tired but sharp. As an alpha, his senses were keen. "Not yet." I handed him my latest report, careful to keep my hands steady. "But the organization is definitely using the fights to launder money. The betting is all cash. No records. Perfect setup." Reeves flipped through the pages, frowning. "You keep mentioning this Hammer guy. Think he'll talk?" The image of Lex flashed in my mind, his teeth at my neck as he claimed me as his Omega. "Maybe," I said, choosing my words carefully. "He's smart, observant, doesn't seem as committed to Kenzo as the others." "Or he's playing you." Reeves closed the file. "Be careful. These guys aren't just breaking up bar fights. Milano's crew has bodies stacked up." "I know." "Do you? Because your write-up reads like you're getting close to him." His nostrils flared slightly, and I felt a surge of panic. Could he smell something I'd missed? Some trace of Lex that had survived my thorough cleaning? Heat crept up my neck. It's my job to get close. That's how I'll get information. Reeves studied me for a long moment. Just remember why you're there, Ward. Get the evidence we need to bring down Milano. That's the mission. Yes, sir. And Ward? He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Be careful with this Hammer character. These alpha fighters are unstable. All aggression and instinct. You start getting too friendly, you could find yourself in over your head. The irony of his warning nearly made me laugh. Too late, Captain. Way too late. I'll be careful, I promise, the lie bitter on my tongue. I left the precinct with Reeves's warning echoing in my head. The mission. Right. The problem was, I hadn't expected Lex, hadn't expected to feel anything beyond professional interest in any of these fighters. They were supposed to be means to an end, stepping stones to taking down a criminal organization that had destroyed lives across the city, including my brother's. A year of working toward taking down Milano. Research, building the case file, getting approval for the undercover operation. Then 3 weeks of painstaking work to infiltrate the fighting scene as their medic. All to bring down the man who'd hooked Michael on heroin, then used his addiction to turn him into a mule. Michael had died in a holding cell, alone and terrified, rather than give up Milano's name. I worked hard to find out who was behind his death. Now I owed him justice. I couldn't let being an Omega derail that. My previous relationships had been carefully selected. Other cops, a prosecutor once, men who understood the job, who followed rules and lived ordered lives like mine. Safe choices that fit neatly into my 5-year plan. My 10-year plan. My entire, mapped-out future. None of them had been alphas, of course. I couldn't risk an alpha's heightened senses detecting what I really was. And none of them had made me feel the way I felt when Lex's eyes locked with mine. Like standing at the edge of something dangerous and exhilarating. Like maybe all my careful planning was just another cage I'd built around myself.
Chapter 7. Lex. I woke with a jolt, disoriented and immediately aware of the emptiness in the apartment. My body ached from a night spent on the too small couch, but that discomfort paled against the sudden realization that Jamie was gone. The alpha in me roared to life, a primal panic clawing at my insides. Where was my Omega, my newly bonded mate? The apartment felt hollow without his scent. I sat up, ignoring the familiar ache of bruised ribs, and spotted a piece of paper on the coffee table. Had to go. We'll see you later. 8 words, not even a full explanation. The alpha in me wanted to hunt him down, to drag him back to our den. This apartment may be a shithole, but for now it was my den. The rational part of me, the part that had kept me alive in situations where instinct would have gotten me killed, knew better. Whatever was happening between us had blindsided him as much as it had me. I picked up the note, inhaling deeply. His scent lingered on the paper, a complex mix of something uniquely him, something that now carried traces of my own scent. The bond mark I'd left on his neck had changed him, changed us both. My phone rang, taking me out of my thoughts. Kenzo's name flashed on the screen. Yeah, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Hammer, where the hell are you? Kenzo's voice was tight, controlled anger vibrating beneath the surface. Home. Why? Denny's dead. Someone shot him in the parking lot last night. Shit. So Jamie's shot had been lethal. My Omega had killed a man. What happened? I kept my tone even, giving nothing away. The poor fuck was shot in the back. The police are all over it. Kenzo paused, and I could almost see him calculating, deciding how much to say. You left around the same time. See anything? No, I lied smoothly. I left straight sometime after the fight. My ribs were killing me. Another pause. Milano wants to talk to everyone who was there last night. I'll tell you when the meeting gets started. The line went dead before I could respond. Milano getting involved meant this was serious. Denny wasn't high enough in the organization to warrant the boss's personal attention, unless there was more to it. My thoughts went immediately to Jamie. If anyone had seen him, I needed to think, needed to move. I needed information, and there was one person I knew had it. I showered quickly and headed to Frankie's bar. The place that served as a front for the fights downstairs wouldn't open for hours, but Frankie lived in the apartment above it. He was the only one who could have seen us, and he would have heard something by now. The back door was unlocked as usual. Frankie's security was laughable. He relied on reputation and Milano's shadow to keep trouble away. I found him in the main room, counting bottles for inventory, a cigarette dangling from his lips despite the early hour. "Little early for a drink, Hammer," he said without looking up. "Not here to drink." I leaned against the bar. "About Denny." Frankie's hands stilled momentarily. "Bad business, that. Cops were crawling all over the lot this morning." "You see anything?" He eyed me closely, narrowing his gaze. "Why do you want to know?" "Because Kenzo's asking me, and Milano's involved now." Frankie set down his clipboard, took a long drag from his cigarette. "I saw you leaving." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "Yeah, the ribs were all banged up. Took my time getting out." "Weren't alone, were you?" Frankie's eyes gleamed with the knowledge that he held something valuable. "What did you see, Frankie?" I stepped closer, not threatening, but establishing presence. He shrugged. "It was too damn dark to see anything. And that's all the police know. You should know I don't make a habit of helping cops. Bad for business." "Keep it that way," I said, not quite a threat, but close enough. "Always do." Frankie picked up his clipboard again. Our little dance of words taught me that Frankie had definitely seen me, and maybe he even saw who I was with. And he wouldn't get specific with anyone who asked. It was the code of places like this: see nothing, say nothing, survive. As we talked, something strange happened. An unusual feeling swept over me, an intense tug, a heightened awareness that vibrated through my veins. My alpha senses, enhanced since the bonding, picked up on something. Someone. Jamie. He was near. The knowledge hit me with absolute certainty, a compass needle swinging unerringly north. My body reacted instantly, pulse quickening, senses sharpening, every instinct driving me to find him. I followed the pull, moving through the building toward the back where the medical room was located. The clinic where fighters got patched up after matches. Where I'd first caught Jamie's true scent beneath the suppressants. The door was ajar, light spilling into the dim hallway. I pushed it open quietly. Jamie stood with his back to me, organizing medical supplies as if it were any normal day. His movements were controlled, precise, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Smell the anxiety rolling off him in waves. His scent had changed since last night, my mark ensuring that any alpha would know he was claimed. He sensed me before I spoke, his body stiffening slightly, the bond between us vibrating like a plucked string. "You left." 2 words, heavy with accusation. He turned slowly, his face carefully composed but eyes betraying his unease.
I had to report. I had to go.
I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, the click of the lock sealing us in privacy. "Report to who?" A flicker of something, caution, maybe fear, crossed his features.
What are you doing here, Lex?
"Looking for answers." I moved closer, nostrils flaring as I took in his scent, now mingled with mine. The alpha in me was pleased by this evidence of our bond, even as the man in me recognized the complication it presented. "Denny's dead." The color drained from his face.
What?
"He was found in the parking lot." I watched him carefully, noting the way his hands trembled slightly before he clenched them into fists. "Police are investigating, and Milano wants answers." He swallowed hard.
I didn't mean to.
"Don't." I cut him off, glancing at the door. "Not here. Not where someone might hear." Jamie nodded, collecting himself.
What do they know? Do they have witnesses?
"Frankie saw us." I stepped closer, into his space. He's keeping it vague. But Milano's asking questions, and you're not telling me everything. Jamie's eyes met mine, defiance warring with something else. The bond between us made lying harder. We could sense each other's emotions now. On some level, that bypassed words.
What do you want to know?
He asked, voice low. Everything, but not here. We left the clinic and headed to a little diner not far from there. The place was a cheap hole in the wall covered in graffiti, but they served a mean double smashed cheeseburger. We settled in the back. Who are you really? The suspicion that had been building since our first meeting crystallized into certainty. You're not just a medic. A long moment stretched between us, tension thick enough to cut. Then Jamie's shoulders sagged slightly, the fight leaving him.
I'm an undercover cop,
He admitted finally.
investigating Milano's organization.
The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd half expected them. A cop. An undercover cop who'd been marked by an alpha fighter in Milano's stable, who'd shot and killed one of Milano's men. Talk about a bad night. How long? I demanded.
3 weeks at the fights. A year of building the case before that.
He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I was beginning to recognize.
It's personal for me.
How?
My brother, Michael.
Pain flashed across Jamie's face.
Milano's organization got him hooked on heroin, then used him as a mule. When he got caught, he refused to give up names, died in a holding cell rather than talk.
The pieces clicked into place. His determination, his presence in a world he clearly didn't belong in. The reason a professional, controlled man like Jamie would risk everything to infiltrate Milano's operation. And now, I asked, gesturing between us, what happens now?
I don't know.
The admission seemed to cost him.
This wasn't supposed to happen. None of it. The suppressants should have worked. I've never...
He stopped himself, taking a deep breath.
My cover is compromised. My entire career is at risk, and I still don't have enough evidence to bring Milano down.
I processed this, the implications spinning out in multiple directions. Jamie wasn't just a cop. He was a cop who'd killed someone while undercover. A cop who'd been marked by an alpha connected to his target. A cop whose carefully constructed identity as a beta was now shattered by our bond. And despite all that, the alpha in me still wanted to protect him, to keep him safe from Milano, from his own department, from everything. Why did you shoot Denny? I asked, needing to understand. Jamie's expression darkened.
He saw us together and figured out what I was. Omega.
His voice caught on the word.
He threatened to expose me. Everything I've worked for would have been destroyed in an instant. Years of hiding what I am, of building this case.
He looked away.
I panicked. Everything was overwhelming, the bonding being exposed, years of work wasted. I just reacted.
I understood panic. Understood acting on instinct when cornered. Didn't justify it, but I understood. Frankie didn't see who pulled the trigger, I said. Police have no leads. Milano's suspicious. But he doesn't know it was you. Relief washed across Jamie's face, followed quickly by determination.
We need to keep it that way.
We. The word hung between us. Not him, not me. We. The bond had made us a unit, whether we'd chosen it or not. His problems were mine now. Mine were his. Biology had ensured that much. I stepped closer, drawn by an instinct older than reason. The separation since waking had been physically uncomfortable, a constant awareness of his absence that had settled like an ache in my chest. Now, with him near, that ache eased. This changes everything, I said, not quite touching him but close enough to feel the heat from his body.
I know.
His eyes met mine, conflict evident in them.
I shouldn't have run this morning. That was cowardly.
Yes, I agreed, not willing to sugarcoat it. It was. A hint of a smile touched his lips, there and gone.
Direct as always.
Always. The tension between us transformed, the atmosphere filled with a new energy beyond mere conflict. The bond tugged at us, calling for reconnection and reassurance. I extended my hand, lightly touching the concealed mark on his neck. Jamie trembled, his eyes deepening in intensity.
We need to talk about what happens next,
he said, but made no move to step away from my touch. We will. I suddenly stood and leaned forward. My hand slid to cup the back of his neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath my palm. Later. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home after a long absence. The alpha in me growled in satisfaction as he yielded, the omega in him responding to my claim.
In Chapter 8. Jamie. My collar felt too tight, damn near strangling me with each passing moment. I tugged at it surreptitiously, checking that the bond mark remained hidden as I made my way through the precinct. Each step away from Lex felt so wrong, like swimming against a powerful current. The discomfort had started as a mild ache this morning and had intensified into something that bordered on physical pain. Ward, my office now. Captain Reeves's voice cut through the bullpen chatter. I turned to see him standing in his doorway, expression unreadable, but posture rigid. My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. I followed him into his office, noting how he closed the door firmly behind us. Not a casual check-in then. Sir? Sit down. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, but remained standing, looking down at me. A classic interrogation technique. There was a shooting last night at that fight club you've been investigating, one of Milano's men, Denny Kovac. My pulse jumped, but I maintained my composure. I heard about it when I came in. I wasn't there when it happened. Reeves observed me intently for a while, his head tilting a bit as if he was trying to grasp something subtle. Then, his nostrils expanded, and his eyes became more focused. You're an Omega, he stated flatly, and you've been claimed. The words hit like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to deny it, but Reeves raised his hand, cutting me off. Don't bother lying, I'm an alpha. I can smell it on you. His voice hardened. How long have you been deceiving this department? The game was up. My carefully constructed identity, maintained through years of suppressance and caution, had crumbled in an instant. Since the academy, I admitted, meeting his gaze directly. I wouldn't have been accepted otherwise. You know that. Damn right you wouldn't. Reeves snapped, finally sitting down. There are reasons Omegas don't work undercover, especially not against organizations like Milano's. It's too dangerous. With all due respect, sir, I've been doing this job successfully for years. My record speaks for itself. Your record was built on a lie. My record was built on my work, I countered, heat entering my voice. My intelligence, my dedication. The fact that I'm an Omega doesn't change any of that. It changes everything, Reeves said, leaning forward. You're compromised now. Your judgment, your independence, your very nature is now tied to someone else. I straightened in my chair. That's exactly the kind of prejudice that forced me to hide what I am. The assumption that Omegas can't think clearly, can't make independent decisions, and can't be trusted. This isn't about prejudice, Ward. It's about reality. Omegas are in fact weaker than alphas and betas on average. Your brains are different too. My brain works fine, I bit out, and I've been hiding what I am for so long that I barely register as an Omega anyway. Reeves let out a harsh laugh. Tell that to your scent. Every alpha in this building will know what you are by the end of the day. The reality of that hit me hard. My career, my reputation, my standing among my colleagues. All of it would change once word got out. So you're pulling me off the case, I said, the words tasting bitter. Reeves was quiet for a moment, considering. You may have come on this case last year, but I've been building this case for 4 fucking years. We're closer than we've ever been to bringing him down. Which is why you need me to continue. What I need, Reeves countered, is someone I can trust. Someone who hasn't been lying to me from day one. Someone who isn't bonded to God knows who while investigating the biggest case this department has seen in a decade. I've seen an Anenda, sir. There's no one else, I pointed out, pushing my advantage. No one with my access or my knowledge of the operation. Pull me now, and you lose everything we've built. Reeves's jaw tightened. Who claimed you? I stiffened. That's personal. Not when it affects my investigation, it isn't. It doesn't affect your investigation, I insisted. I can still do my job. Reeves studied me, alpha authority radiating from him. Once it might have intimidated me, but I'd faced down too many alphas in my life to be cowed now, especially with Lex's mark on my neck. It's sort of given me a strange new source of confidence. Fine, he said finally. You stay on the case up to for now, but only because we can't afford to start from scratch, and only because Milano needs to go down. When this is over, we'll have a serious discussion about your future with this department. Thank you, sir, I said, relieved. Don't thank me yet. His expression was severe. I expect daily reports, no more disappearing acts, no more surprises. And if I get even a whiff that your personal situation is compromising this investigation, you're done. Understood? Yes, sir. One more thing, Reeves said as I stood to leave. When this is over, and Milano is in custody, we'll revisit this again. I nodded and left his office, feeling the weight of his gaze on my back. My career was hanging by a thread, my identity exposed, my future uncertain. But for now, at least, I was still on the case. Finding an empty interrogation room, I locked the door and sank against the wall, finally allowing myself to process what had just happened. Reeves knew. Soon everyone would know. Years of careful deception, undone in an instant. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lex's number, needing to hear his voice in a way that both comforted and terrified me. Was this the Bond talking? Or just human need in a moment of crisis?
Jamie?
His voice came through, instantly easing some of the physical discomfort I'd been feeling. My captain knows, I said without preamble, about me being an Omega. A pause.
I'm not surprised.
I ran a hand through my hair. He's keeping me on the case for now, but he's suspicious. And the police are investigating Denny's shooting. Be careful what you say to anyone.
I always am.
His voice was steady, reassuring.
You okay?
The question was simple but hit somewhere deep. Was I okay? My career was in jeopardy, I'd killed a man, my secret was exposed, and I was bonded to someone I barely knew. And yet, I will be, I answered, surprised to find I meant it. Just watch your back. I'll try to find out more about the investigation.
We'll figure this out.
The way he spoke caused a tightness in my chest, stirring an emotion I wasn't prepared to identify. I know. I have to go. I ended the call, already missing the connection to him. The Bond was doing this to me. I knew it. Creating a dependency I'd spent my life avoiding. Yet even knowing that, I couldn't bring myself to regret it entirely. Not when his voice alone could center me in the midst of chaos. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my clothes and prepared to face a precinct full of people who would soon know what I truly was. One step at a time. Get through today. Focus on the case. On Milano. On justice for Michael. Everything else would have to wait.
Lex. I barely had time to process Jamie's call when Kenzo appeared at the gym, his expression grim. Milano wants everyone at the club, now. His tone left no room for argument. It's time. He practically sang. The club was closed at this hour, the main area eerily quiet without the usual crowd. The back room, normally used for private gambling, had been transformed into a makeshift conference room. About 20 people were already gathered, fighters, dealers, runners, all the various pieces of Milano's operation. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Milano himself stood at the head of the table, immaculately dressed as always in a tailored suit that did nothing to soften his hard edges. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room as people filtered in. I found a spot near the back, keeping my expression neutral. Show nothing. React to nothing. Lessons learned early and reinforced often in this world. When the room was full, Milano spoke, his voice deceptively soft. One of our own was murdered last night, shot in the back, in our parking lot. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. Perhaps Denny was replaceable. He began to pace, hands clasped behind his back. What isn't replaceable is my peace of mind, my organization's security, my ability to conduct business without police crawling up my ass. The room was silent, everyone barely breathing. Someone here knows something, Milano continued. Maybe you pulled the trigger. Maybe you saw who did. Maybe you've heard whispers. I don't care which it is. I want information. A fighter named Cruz shifted uncomfortably. Boss, Denny had plenty of enemies, could have been anyone from the neighborhood. Milano's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Could have been, he agreed, except for the security footage. My blood ran cold, but I kept my face impassive. Milano nodded to one of his men, who laid a tablet on the table. This shows several vehicles still in the lot at the time of the shooting, including yours, Hammer. All eyes turned to me. I met Milano's gaze steadily. The footage only showed my car, but not me carrying Jamie to the car or us leaving. Hell, it didn't even show the shooting. What the hell was going on? It took some time to recover. The doc was stitching me up, then I left soon after. There was nobody in the lot when I left. Milano, come on. Another fighter spoke up. Why are we wasting time on Denny? The guy was a nobody, and the cops ain't gonna care about some low level. The motion was so fast I almost missed it. Milano grabbed a letter opener from the table and slammed it through the fighter's hand, pinning it to the wood. The man screamed, more in shock than pain at first. Nobody in my organization is a nobody, Milano said calmly, as if he hadn't just mutilated someone. Every person serves a purpose. Every position matters, and anyone who thinks differently doesn't understand what we're building here. He left the letter opener embedded in the man's hand, turning back to address the room while the fighter whimpered. I don't care who Denny was. I care that someone thought they could kill in my backyard and get away with it. I care that the police are now looking more closely at my business. I care that someone here is either responsible or protecting the person who is. His gaze swept the room again, lingering slightly longer on me. I will find out what happened. Until then, everyone is suspect. Everyone is being watched. Keep your heads down, your mouth shut, and your eyes open. He straightened his already immaculate tie. You're dismissed. People began filing out, giving wide berth to the fighter still pinned to the table. No one offered to help him. No one wanted to be associated with the target of Milano's displeasure. I was nearly to the door when Kenzo caught my arm. Not you. Stay. Unease rippled through me, but I nodded, moving to the side as others exited. When the room was empty except for us, the fighter having finally yanked his hand free and stumbled out, Kenzo closed the door. Milano doesn't have all the footage, he said without preamble. I kept my expression neutral. What's that supposed to mean? It means you owe me a fucking explanation. Kenzo leaned against the table, eyes calculating. Why did I have to show footage from last fucking week to cover your ass? If you saw something, why didn't you tell Milano? I asked carefully. Why protect me? A thin smile crossed his face. Because information is power, and right now I need all the power I can get and you're useful. Milano would just kill you as an example. Such a waste of talent. What are you planning? Let's just say Milano's time at the top is coming to an end. Kenzo studied me. The question is, where do you want to be when it does? With the old regime or the new one? I didn't answer immediately, weighing my options. Kenzo had always been ambitious, but going against Milano was suicide unless he had serious leverage. Apparently, he thought he did. I found Omega suppressants in the clinic, so let me put these little pieces together. An amped-up alpha is seen carrying a naked man out of the bar, the same naked man hiding suppressants at work. Denny saw us together, realized Jamie was an Omega, something he didn't want exposed, and well, Denny threatened to expose him. Kenzo seemed to be filing this information away. So the good doctor has secrets worth killing for. Interesting. I guess if I was an Omega, I wouldn't want that shit getting out given where he chose to work. He laughed. The son of a bitch had so much debt, he can't afford to lose this extra income. So, did you fuck him? Mark him? Whatever it is you alphas do? He's under my protection, if that's what you're asking. So, I would prefer it if you speak only to me when it concerns him. Kenzo laughed and held his hand up in surrender. Don't worry. I don't need jack shit from him. It's you I want. What do you want? What I've been asking of you for years now. Come work for me. Quit this bullshit fighting and make more money than you've ever dreamed of. What are you going to do with the footage? I asked directly, although I knew where this was headed. That depends on you, Kenzo replied. I've always been loyal to whoever pays me, I said, which we both knew was true. If what you have in mind pays well, then I'm in. I stifled a groan. I never wanted to go deeper in this business outside of fighting. At least then I could pay off what I owe and split. Once you went too deep, they truly had you by the balls. But things were different now. I had an Omega to keep safe, not just from Milano, but there was no way we could remain in my run-down apartment in the ass end of the city while I drive around in a rusty, beat-up pickup truck. What if Jamie was pregnant? What was I gonna do? Go and get a regular job? I barely graduated from high school. The last thing I wanted was to get stuck in this life, but what else did I have to offer someone like him? Good answer. Kenzo pushed away from the table. For now, keep fighting, keep your head down, and keep your Omega on a tighter leash. I nodded, hiding my reaction to his casual command regarding Jamie. And the footage? Safe with me. Insurance for us both. He headed for the door. I'll be in touch.
Chapter 9. Jamie. I sat on the edge of my bathtub staring at the plastic stick in my hand. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Pregnant. I tossed the stick on the counter. This was impossible. I'd been on suppressants for years. Military-grade suppressants that had never failed me, not even during my heats. Until Lex. He was my fated one, no matter how hard I tried to deny it. I've heard stories about such pairings, but they were rare. That somewhere out there in the world is your perfect match that your body recognizes before your brain does. I pressed a hand to my abdomen, still flat beneath my shirt, a life growing inside me. Our child. Mine and Lex's. The thought sent a rush of emotions through me so complex I couldn't begin to untangle them. The physical signs had been there for days, but I'd attributed them to stress. The fatigue, the sensitivity to smells, the way my emotions seemed to fluctuate more dramatically than usual. All classic symptoms I should have recognized immediately, but had dismissed as the aftermath of bonding. My reflection in the mirror looked the same, but everything had changed. My scent would soon follow, broadcasting my condition to any alpha within range. No amount of suppressants could mask pregnancy pheromones. Hell, they couldn't even mask the mark Lex gave me. My carefully constructed facade as a beta cop would crumble completely. I needed to tell Lex. The thought of calling him to my apartment made my stomach clench. This space was mine. Private. The one place untouched by my work, or the violence of Milano's world. Photos of Michael on the wall. My academy graduation picture on the bookshelf. Case files neatly organized on my desk. The life I'd built, separate from everything else. But that separation was an illusion now. The bond had shattered those carefully constructed walls, and this pregnancy had demolished what remained. I picked up my phone and dialed before I could second-guess myself.
Jamie?
His voice came through immediately. The bond between us made him sensitive to my moods, even from a distance. I need to see you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Can you come to my place? I gave him the address, another barrier broken.
What's wrong?
He asked. Just come, please. After hanging up, I paced the living room, seeing it through Lex's eyes. The minimalist furniture, the organized bookshelves, the caseboard I'd hidden behind a curtain, tracking Milano's operation for a year. Nothing like the chaotic warmth of his apartment. Nothing that said home or comfort. Just function and order. God, I was a freaking robot. Just what have I been doing with my life all this time? When the knock came, my heart leapt into my throat. I opened the door to find Lex standing there. The moment he stepped inside, he sniffed me out. His eyes widened. His body went completely still.
Jamie,
He whispered, his gaze dropping to my stomach. I hadn't counted on him scenting the pregnancy immediately. Stupid oversight for an Omega who'd bonded with an Alpha. His senses would be especially attuned to changes in me. Come in, I said unnecessarily, closing the door behind him. He moved into my apartment slowly, taking in the surroundings while never fully shifting his attention from me.
you're pregnant.
He stated, not a question. I nodded, swallowing hard. Yes,
I'm happy. Trust me.
he said, finally moving to the couch. I sat across from him, maintaining distance that felt unnatural given our bond. I never planned for this, I said. Never even thought it was possible. I almost believed the pills had damaged something in me.
Our child.
He interrupted, the words sending a shiver through me.
Our baby.
The wonder in his voice caught me off guard. In all the scenarios I'd imagined while waiting for him, his awe hadn't been among them. Anger, perhaps. Confusion, certainly. But not this almost reverent acceptance. Yeah. I rested my hand on my abdomen. Our baby. His expression shifted then, hardening into something more guarded.
There's something you need to know.
Just like that, reality crashed back in. By the way you look, it doesn't sound like good news.
Kenzo has footage of you shooting Denny, but he didn't show it to Milano.
I shivered. He told you this?
He held me up after the meeting with Milano.
My mind raced, analyzing this new threat from every angle. Why hasn't he turned us in?
He's planning something. A move against Milano.
Lex ran a hand through his hair.
He sees the footage as leverage. Insurance to make me work for him.
As if on cue, Lex's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his brow furrowing. Speak of the devil.
Damn, he moves fast. He's planning it for tonight.
Lex said, pocketing his phone.
Milano is apparently calling a meeting, but this time with the team leaders before he heads to California. This might be his only chance.
If Kenzo is planning to take down Milano, then he's probably got every man he has on standby. That means his office will be empty. He has a safe there where he keeps blackmail material on key figures in the organization. I found out about it during my undercover work. If he has footage of me, that's where he'd store it.
No.
Lex's voice was hard.
You're not going anywhere near that place. Not in your condition.
This might be our only chance to get that footage before it destroys both our lives, I argued. I can call Reeves and arrange a raid on the meeting. While everyone's distracted, I can get into the safe.
Absolutely not.
Lex stood, alpha pheromones flooding the room.
You're carrying our child. I won't let you risk yourself like that.
I'm still a cop, I countered, standing to meet his gaze. I'm trained for this, and I have more reason than ever to make sure that footage never sees the light of day.
Then tell me where it is. I'll get it after the meeting.
And what if it's too late? Don't you want to be free of him once and for all?
I do, but
But what? You don't want your Omega to be the one who frees you. You want to carry the burden all by your lonesome like a good little alpha. Lex paced, agitation evident in every movement.
So I go to the meeting while you break into his office alone, pregnant with no backup? That's your plan?
I'll have backup.
You really plan to tell your boss what's going on? That you shot Denny? That you're pregnant with the child of one of Milano's fighters?
Lex's voice rose with each question.
How much of your career are you willing to sacrifice?
The question hit me hard. My career. The thing I'd built my entire identity around. The justice I'd sought for Michael. Was I willing to let it all go now? Reeves already knows I'm an Omega, I said more quietly. And he'll know I'm pregnant the moment he sees me. Some secrets are already out. Lex stopped pacing, his expression softening slightly.
Then let the police handle it. If they raid the meeting, then it won't matter if I'm there. I'll head to the office and get the footage.
There's something I want you to do at that meeting. If possible, Record it, then try to get out early before the raid. If you can't make it out, then I can cover for you and tell Reeves you were acting as my informant. The recording can save you.
I can do that. And when Kenzo and Milano are in custody, I can head to the unit and get that footage.
I knew that was the logical choice, the responsible one, but the thought of that footage existing, a sword hanging over our future, made it impossible to accept. I needed to get it myself, to know for certain it was destroyed. Fine, I agreed, lying my ass off. I'll call Reeves and arrange the raid. Just tell me what time it starts so they can get ready, and I'll tell Reeves you're my informant who is recording it. I don't want to tell them too soon, because they might want to put a wire on you and that's too risky.
And you'll stay here?
Yes. He certainly looked relieved, making my guilt sharper. I was using his trust against him, but couldn't see another option.
I'll record everything.
The moment I'm free, I'll destroy the footage. I nodded, moving closer to him. The pull of our bond made the proximity both comforting and painful, knowing I was deceiving him. Be careful. If they catch you recording...
They won't.
He pulled me against him, his hand coming to rest protectively over my stomach.
I'll leave as soon as I have enough evidence before the raid starts. Chapter 10. Lex. The club was eerily quiet without the usual crowd buying overpriced drinks and shouting over fights. Milano had shut everything down for tonight's meeting. No bartenders, no bouncers, just darkness broken by security lights casting long shadows across the empty floor. New faces dotted the room, men in ill-fitting suits that betrayed the weapons underneath. I recognized none of them but understood immediately. Kenzo had brought reinforcements. They tracked me with predatory eyes as I crossed the main floor, their stillness more threatening than any motion could be. I felt my phone heavy in my jacket pocket, already set to record. A basic smartphone would capture better quality than any dedicated device, and nobody would question finding it during a search. My heartbeat quickened as I approached the back hallway. Every person I passed could end this operation with a simple pat-down. The concrete corridor to Milano's conference room seemed to stretch endlessly, my footsteps echoing against walls that smelled of stale smoke and industrial cleaner. The atmosphere felt charged tonight, like air before lightning strikes. At the door stood Milano's infamous twins, enforcers with matching Serbian prison scars cutting across their cheeks. They patted me down efficiently, finding my phone, but merely glancing at it before handing it back. One of them jerked his head toward the door. "Clean," he muttered. Inside, the conference room overflowed with bodies. 20 men crammed around a table built for 15, everyone jockeying for position closest to power. Milano commanded the head of the table, silver hair reflecting the overhead lights, worry lines deepening his forehead. His custom suit probably cost more than most fighters earned in a year. His gaze assessed each man as they settled, cataloging loyalty and weakness. Kenzo sat at Milano's right hand, the trusted lieutenant's position. His burgundy shirt and gray suit spoke of careful calculation, gold cufflinks flashing whenever he moved. Nothing in his expression revealed his plans, but tension radiated from his shoulders. I positioned myself against the back wall among other fighters, the shadows offering partial concealment while giving me clear sight of everyone present. Perfect for what I needed to do. Milano didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. The room fell quiet at his first word. "We have a problem," he began, his accent refined despite the brutality I knew lurked underneath. "Police pressure is growing. Someone's been careless, or worse, someone's been talking." His gaze cut through the room, lingering on each face long enough to make several men look away. "I leave for California tomorrow. Business, that can't wait. During my absence, I expect absolute discipline." His fingers tapped once against the polished wood. No mistakes. I slipped my hand into my pocket and started the recording app, keeping my movement casual as I pretended to adjust my stance. "With respect," Kenzo interjected. "Perhaps your trip requires postponement. Our situation here demands immediate attention." Milano's expression cooled several degrees. You question my decisions now. I question timing, Kenzo replied, leaning forward. Rodriguez's crew advances on the east side. Denny's killer remains at large. Our fighters grow nervous. And now you leave? Anyone who knew Milano recognized the danger in his subtle shift of posture. He never tolerated public challenges. My business in California concerns all our operations, Milano responded. I could tell he was getting frustrated. Including the east side problem. Kenzo appeared to yield with a nod. Of course. I merely suggest we handle internal threats before external opportunities. A heavyset captain with a deeply lined face spoke up. The police situation worries me more than territory. My contacts suggest they're building a RICO case. Milano's attention snapped to him. Your contacts? Department sources. The man clarified hastily. Nothing concrete, whispers only. As the discussion continued, Vasquez, a bull-necked fighter beside me, shifted his weight, bumping my arm. My phone nearly slipped from my pocket. I quickly adjusted it, heart hammering as I feigned checking the time. Vasquez mumbled an apology before returning his attention to the growing tension at the table. My pulse gradually steadied, but the close call left me hyper-aware of every movement around me. Kenzo rose abruptly and walked to the small bar in the corner. Perhaps we should consider more dramatic changes. He poured amber liquid into a crystal glass, deliberately turning his back to Milano. Our current approach clearly isn't working. What exactly are you suggesting? Milano's question cut through the room. Kenzo turned, swirling his drink. I'm suggesting it might be time for new leadership. The room crystallized into absolute silence. No movement, no whispers, not even breathing. You dare. Milano barely moved his lips. I dare because it's necessary. Kenzo gestured broadly around the table. These men know it's true. You've grown cautious. Maybe you're too old for this job. Taking trips while our territory crumbles and hiding from police instead of owning them ain't a good look. I checked my watch. 15 minutes until the raid Jamie had arranged. I needed an exit strategy soon. Milano rose slowly, hands pressing flat against the table. After everything I've built, everything I've given you. You built it, Kenzo acknowledged, and now you're losing it. This is how you repay loyalty? Milano's knuckles whitened. This isn't about loyalty, Kenzo replied. It's about survival. And I have 20 more men waiting outside to ensure my survival, and the survival of anyone who stands with me. The room fractured as men physically repositioned themselves, choosing sides without words. I mentally mapped potential escape routes while calculating which fighters might block my path. Vote then, Milano challenged, rage burning beneath his controlled demeanor. Who stands with this traitor? One of Milano's captains, a thin man with pockmarked skin, drew his weapon and aimed at Kenzo before anyone could speak. Talk's finished, he snarled. Kenzo remained perfectly still, expression unfazed. He smiled faintly, and 3 of his men produced guns of their own. The room exploded into chaos, tables overturned, glass shattered, men shouted as they either chose sides or sought cover. I used the distraction to edge toward the exit. In the confusion, a fighter slipping away would go unnoticed. I kept low, moving steadily toward the door. A gunshot cracked through the shouting. Then another. Someone cried out. A body hit the floor with a sickening thud. I reached the door and gripped the handle when a heavy hand yanked me backward. Vasquez's fist connected with my ribs before I could turn around. Where you think you're going, Hammer? He snarled, already launching another punch. I blocked the second blow and countered, driving my elbow into his sternum. I don't have stakes in this, I gasped through the pain in my side. Everyone picks a side tonight, he growled, recovering quickly and charging forward. We crashed into the wall, knocking a framed boxing poster to the floor. The glass shattered as we grappled. Behind us, the room had descended into complete chaos. Gunshots punctuated shouts and breaking furniture. Blood spattered across the formerly pristine walls. I ducked under Vasquez's wild haymaker and drove my fist upward into his jaw. His head snapped back, but another fighter tackled me from the side. We hit the ground hard, my phone digging painfully into my hip as we rolled across broken glass and splintered wood. Everyone was fighting now. Kenzo directed his faction from behind an overturned table, his calm voice somehow cutting through the mayhem. Milano was nowhere to be seen, either escaped or hidden within the violent scrum that had consumed the room. I struggled to my feet, tasting blood from a split lip. The fighter who tackled me lay stunned after hitting his head against an overturned chair. Vasquez was already charging toward me again, murder in his eyes. We traded blows in the center of the chaos, each of us landing solid hits. My training gave me an edge, but Vasquez fought with desperate fury. A gunshot rang out just feet away from us, someone in Kenzo's faction taking aim at one of Milano's captains, who clutched his shoulder and staggered backward. I finally connected with a devastating right hook that sent Vasquez crashing into a group of fighters. The momentary opening gave me a chance to assess the room. 10 minutes remained before the scheduled raid, but with gunfire erupting, they'd likely move sooner. I needed an exit now. The main door remained blocked by fighting. The windows were barred, ventilation ducts too narrow for escape. Milano's private office door stood ajar across the room, a potential exit if it had a window or back door, but just as likely a dead end. I wiped blood from my mouth and began forcing my way through the brawl, dodging thrown punches and furniture, while trying to reach any possible escape route. The fight had consumed everyone, former allies turning on each other as the power structure crumbled in real time. Then came the sound. Loud, unmistakable crashes from the main floor, followed by breaking glass and splintering wood. "Police! Freeze!" I froze mid-step, hands instinctively rising above my head as tactical officers flooded through the door, weapons drawn and shouting commands. "On the ground! Hands visible!" an officer shouted through his face shield. I complied immediately, dropping to my knees before lying face down with arms extended. Around me, others made different choices. A fighter to my left charged the entry team and collapsed under a taser barrage. Someone behind me cursed in Italian. Milano, finally reappearing as officers secured him. Kenzo's voice remained remarkably composed amidst the chaos. "Officers, I'm cooperating fully." Cold metal closed around my wrists despite my compliance. 2 officers hauled me roughly to my feet. "Name?" one demanded. "Lex Reyes," I answered simply, keeping my voice low. They began moving me toward the exit with the other detainees when a tall figure intercepted us. Captain Reeves himself, supervising the operation. He studied my face for a moment, recognition flashing in his eyes. "This one comes with me," Reeves commanded, taking my arm from the officer. He guided me to a quieter corner, performing a thorough pat-down himself. When he reached my pocket, he found my phone, examining it briefly before pocketing it. To anyone watching, it looked like standard property confiscation. "Ward told me to look for you," he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "We'll sort everything out at the station." They led me through the club, past overturned furniture and broken glass. Outside, red and blue lights transformed the night. Police vehicles packed the street. Officers led handcuffed men into transport vans. Kenzo's reinforcements already secured. I caught glimpses of Milano and Kenzo being escorted to separate vehicles. Milano's face contorted with rage while Kenzo maintained an almost satisfied expression, as if even this outcome somehow served his purpose. As they guided me into a cruiser, my skin prickled with a sensation that had nothing to do with the chaos around me. A tug deep in my chest pulled my attention toward the darkened buildings across the street. The bond between us, that invisible connection formed the night I'd marked Jamie, hummed with proximity. My gaze swept the shadows between parked cars, the recessed doorways, the alleys beyond the police barricade. Somehow I knew he was lying. The officer's hand pressed against my head, forcing me into the back seat of the cruiser. The door slammed, sealing me inside as the car pulled away from the curb. I twisted in my seat, searching through the rear window until the club disappeared from view.
Chapter 11. Jamie. The neighborhood looked different at night, shadows filling the spaces between the sparse streetlights. Most businesses were closed, metal security gates pulled down over storefronts. A few homeless people huddled in doorways, but otherwise the streets were empty. Frankie's bar occupied the corner of a rundown block, the building extending backward to include the fight club in the basement and Kenzo's office on the second floor. A separate entrance on the side led directly to the upper level, avoiding the bar entirely. I parked a block away and approached on foot, laptop bag slung over my shoulder, scanning for any signs of security. The building appeared deserted, just as I'd hoped. Everyone who mattered would be at Milano's emergency meeting. The side door had a simple deadbolt, a challenge my lockpicks could handle in under 30 seconds. I worked quickly, ears attuned to any approaching footsteps or vehicles. The lock clicked open and I slipped inside, closing the door silently behind me. A narrow staircase led up to the second floor. I moved carefully, keeping my weight on the edges of the steps to minimize creaking. At the top, a hallway stretched in both directions. Left led to a series of small offices used by Kenzo's assistants. Right led to his private domain. I turned right, passing darkened rooms filled with filing cabinets and computer equipment. At the end of the hall stood a heavy wooden door with management stenciled on frosted glass. Another lock, slightly more sophisticated than the first, but still within my capabilities. Kenzo's office was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, tasteful art on the walls, a large mahogany desk dominating the center of the room. A bar occupied one corner, crystal decanters filled with amber liquids, catching what little light filtered through the blinds. I set my laptop on the desk and began searching methodically. Desk drawers first, then filing cabinets, then the bookshelf. Nothing resembling a hard drive or storage device. No keys to a separate location. The wall safe behind a painting of a boxing match came as no surprise. A sleek panel with a fingerprint scanner. No conventional lock, no keypad. Just smooth metal and a small glass square for a fingerprint. The USB had to be inside. Fuck. The clock was ticking. A noise from the outer office froze me in place. Footsteps. Heavy. Male. Moving with purpose. Kenzo had left someone behind. I grabbed my laptop and slid into a storage closet, leaving the door cracked just enough to see out. The footsteps grew louder, approaching Kenzo's office directly. The door opened, and a large figure stepped inside. Victor, Kenzo's personal enforcer. A mountain of a man with hands like sledgehammers and a face that had seen too many fights. I'd treated him once for a knife wound sustained during a business disagreement. He moved through the office with surprising grace for his size, checking the desk, then the bar, pouring himself a generous drink. He settled into Kenzo's chair, propping his feet on the desk, apparently planning to wait out whatever was happening at Milano's meeting in comfort. I weighed my options, wait for him to leave, which might not happen until after the raid. Try to slip out unnoticed, abandoning my search? Neither option appealed. The decision was made for me when Victor suddenly sniffed the air like a dog. He set down his glass, head turning slowly toward my hiding place. "I smell you, Omega," he growled, his voice low and threatening. "Come out, now." I pushed the door open, stepping into the office with my hand near my weapon. No point pretending I wasn't there. Victor's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed with suspicion. "The medic? What are you doing in Kenzo's office?" "Looking for Kenzo," I replied smoothly. "He asked me to meet him here." "Bullshit." Victor stood, circling the desk toward me. "Kenzo's at Milano's. Everyone knows that." He moved closer, scenting the air around me. His expression changed as he registered my condition. "Pregnant," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. I maintained my position, refusing to back away despite every instinct screaming to put distance between us. "This is a misunderstanding. I'll leave now." "No." Victor stepped closer. I think Kenzo will want to know why his medic is sneaking around his office while he's away. His eyes traveled over me appraisingly. But first, let's see what acclaimed Omega feels like. Your alpha isn't here to stop me. He lunged forward, faster than I expected from someone his size. I pivoted, using his momentum to send him crashing into the bookshelf. Books tumbled around him as he recovered, snarling with anger and wounded pride. You'll regret that, he promised, circling more cautiously now. I kept the desk between us, mind racing through tactical options. Victor outweighed me by at least 100 pounds of solid muscle. In a straight fight, I'd lose. I needed a weapon or an exit. He feinted left, then drove right, cutting off my path to the door. His fist connected with my eye in a blinding explosion of pain. I staggered back, vision swimming, tasting blood where I'd bitten my cheek. Victor pressed his advantage, grabbing my arm and twisting it behind my back. He slammed me face down onto Kenzo's desk, pinning me with his weight. Not so tough now, he grunted in my ear. My free hand scrabbled across the desk, searching for anything useful. My fingers closed around something solid. A marble statue of a boxer, one of Kenzo's pretentious decorations. I brought it down hard against Victor's temple. The impact reverberated up my arm. He released me with a howl of pain, stumbling backward. Blood streamed down the side of his face from a deep gash. I clutched the statue, ready to strike again. But Victor crashed to his knees, then collapsed face first onto the carpet. Unconscious or worse, I couldn't tell. The statue had cracked from the impact. As I examined it, part of the base fell away, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside was a tiny glass jar containing what appeared to be a preserved human fingertip, floating in clear liquid. What the hell? I muttered, carefully removing the jar. I checked Victor quickly. Still breathing, still bleeding. He'd need medical attention, but he wasn't an immediate threat. The severed digit bobbed grotesquely in its preservative bath as I held it up to the dim light. That biometric safe. My eye throbbed, already swelling shut. I'd have an impressive black eye tomorrow, but that was the least of my concerns. I unscrewed the jar and carefully extracted the preserved fingertip. The flesh was pale and slightly withered, but the print remained intact. With a grimace, I pressed it against the scanner. A green light flashed, followed by the soft click of the safe unlocking. Inside, an external hard drive nestled among folders of documents. I grabbed it, connecting it to my laptop. The drive contained dozens of video files, organized by date. I found the night of Denny's shooting easily, double-clicked, watched myself pull the trigger. The footage was clear. Unmistakable evidence that would destroy me if it ever became public. I quickly deleted my file, but it wasn't enough. I needed to be certain. I copied the other evidence against him to my laptop, then disconnected the drive and smashed it repeatedly with the broken statue until it was nothing but shattered plastic and bent metal. I gathered my laptop and headed for the door, stepping carefully over Victor's unconscious form. My eye throbbed in time with my racing pulse. Blood soaked into the carpet beneath Victor's head. I slipped out of the office and down the stairs, praying Lex had managed to get out before the raid as we'd planned. The cool night air hit my face as I emerged onto the street, a stark contrast to the adrenaline-fueled heat coursing through my body. Behind me, evidence of my crime lay destroyed. Before me, an uncertain future with my alpha and our child.
Chapter 12. Lex. The processing officer slid the plastic bin containing my belongings across the counter. Sign here, he said, tapping a form with his pen. And here. I scrawled my signature on the release papers, conscious of the clock on the wall showing just past noon. 3 days I'd spent in this station, answering the same questions in different ways to different detectives. Yes, I worked for Kenzo. No, I wasn't involved in the drug distribution. Yes, I knew about the money laundering, but only peripherally. No, I had no direct dealings with Milano. The recording I'd made at the meeting had helped establish my credibility as Jamie's informant. Captain Reeves had been skeptical at first, but the evidence was too valuable to ignore. Milano and Kenzo caught on tape planning to kill each other made for an airtight case. You're free to go, Mr. Reyes. the officer said, pushing my wallet, keys, and phone toward me. "Don't leave town." I nodded, pocketing my belongings. My phone was dead after 3 days without charging. I wouldn't be able to call Jamie until I found a charger or reached his apartment. Jamie. The thought of him sent a mixture of relief and anxiety through me. Was he safe? Did he keep his promise to stay home while I was at the meeting? Part of me believed he had, but a more realistic part knew better. Jamie was too independent-minded, too determined to take matters into his own hands. If I were a betting man, I'd put money on him going after that footage despite the risks. What had I gotten myself into with this Omega? Why had fate chosen someone so stubborn, so willing to put himself in danger? But then again, anyone else would probably bore me to tears. There was something about Jamie's fire, his refusal to be what his nature dictated, that called to something equally rebellious in me. I pushed through the station doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Freedom felt strange after 3 days in a holding cell. The fresh air carried the scent of nearby food trucks and car exhaust. Normal life continuing while mine had been completely upended. I scanned the parking lot, unsure of my next move. My truck was still at Milano's club, probably impounded by now. I needed to find Jamie, make sure he and our baby were safe. Then we could figure out what came next. A familiar car caught my eye, parked across the street, and leaning against it, arms crossed over his chest, was Jamie. He was alive. He was here. I wanted to hug him and shake him, but as I got closer, I noticed the spectacular black eye that had blossomed on the left side of his face, purple and green bruising extending from his eyebrow to his cheekbone. My relief curdled into anger. He hadn't stayed home after all.
Jamie. I spotted Lex the moment he emerged from the station. He looked tired, his normally perfect hair disheveled, stubble darkening his jaw. But he was alive. He was free. My relief had nothing to do with our biological bond, and everything to do with my genuine feelings for him. In just a few short weeks, Lex had shown himself to be more than just the fighter I'd initially assessed him to be. He was kind despite his rough exterior, protective without being possessive, intelligent in ways formal education couldn't measure. A good man caught in bad circumstances, just trying to make his way through. I got out of the car and stood by it, watching him notice me across the street. He quickened his pace, his eyes darting around as his brow furrowed with both relief and concern as he approached. But when his gaze landed on my black eye, his jaw dropped. His face twisted with disbelief, and a vein pulsed visibly on his temple as his shock transformed into simmering anger. I'd expected that. Deserved it, even. I'd promised to stay home, to stay safe, and had done neither.
"You didn't stay home,"
he said, stopping a few feet from me. "No."
"You went after the footage."
"Yes." No point denying it. The evidence was written across my face. Lex closed his eyes briefly, as if seeking patience.
"What happened to your eye?"
One of Kenzo's men was at the office, Victor. We had a disagreement about my presence there.
"Victor is twice your size."
Lex's jaw tightened.
"He could have killed you."
But he didn't. I leaned back against the car. I found the footage and destroyed it completely. No one will ever see it.
"And it only cost you a black eye."
Lex's voice held less anger than I'd expected.
"You could have been seriously hurt, Jamie. You and the baby."
I know. I crossed my arms, suddenly self-conscious. It was reckless, but I couldn't leave that evidence out there, hanging over both our heads. Lex was quiet for a long moment, just looking at me.
"Part of me knew you'd go."
He admitted finally.
"I didn't want to believe it, but I knew."
"You're not as angry as I expected," I said cautiously.
"I was. I am."
He sighed, moving closer until he stood directly in front of me.
"But what's the point? You did what you thought you had to do, and you're okay. That's what matters."
A pause.
"You are okay, right? Besides the eye."
"Yes, we're both fine." I rested one hand briefly on my stomach. He leaned casually against the car next to me, our shoulders nearly brushing against each other. The warmth of the afternoon sun bathed us. Gradually, the tension that had hung between us like an invisible wall began to dissolve, replaced by a comfortable stillness as we stood side by side, feeling the gentle heat of the day envelop us.
What happens now, Jamie?
What do you mean?
With us.
He gestured between us.
This bond, your career, everything.
I took a deep breath. Reeves fired me officially. He was actually pretty decent about it, all things considered. Said he'd give me a neutral recommendation if I apply somewhere else.
And do you want to? Apply somewhere else?
I considered the question. I don't know. Being a cop was my whole identity for so long. But now, I touched my stomach again. Things change.
They do.
Lex looked down at his hands.
You know, there are places, clinics. They have procedures that can break bonds. If you're feeling trapped.
The suggestion caught me completely off guard. Is that what you want?
No.
His answer came quickly, definitively.
But I want you to know you have options. That you're not stuck with me.
I turned to face him fully. I don't feel trapped, Lex, not by you. I held his gaze steadily. I want to get to know you. The real you. Not just the fighter I met at the club. If that's what you want too. Relief softened his features.
It is.
Good. I smiled, ignoring the twinge from my bruised face. Because I think we could be good together. Not because you're an alpha and I'm an omega, but because we're Lex and Jamie.
I'd like that.
He reached out, tentatively taking my hand.
To actually know each other beyond all this.
He gestured vaguely at our situation. So what now? I asked. What do you want, Lex? Now that you're free from Kenzo and Milano. He looked thoughtful.
I want to open a gym, a legitimate one. Teach boxing to young alphas. Help them channel their aggression into something positive instead of falling into the trap I did.
That sounds perfect for you.
What about you?
He asked.
What do you want, Jamie?
I laughed softly. I want to learn how to let go of control. I've spent my whole life planning everything down to the minute, and look where it got me. I squeezed his hand. Maybe we can find a place together. Do everything the wrong way until we figure out how to do it right. A genuine smile spread across Lex's face.
I like that plan, or non-plan.
Me too. We stood there, hands linked, the afternoon sun warm on our shoulders. Two people from completely different worlds, brought together by chance and biology, choosing to stay together by choice. Lex stepped closer, his free hand coming up to gently cradle my face, careful of my bruised eye.
We're going to figure this out,
he said quietly. Together, I agreed. When he kissed me, it felt different from our first desperate encounters. No biological imperative driving us, no adrenaline from danger or fear. Just two people choosing each other, building something new from the wreckage of their old lives. It felt like a beginning. Epilogue. Jamie. 2 years later. Morning sunlight streamed through windows that actually opened, casting warm patches across the hardwood floors of our apartment. 2 years ago, I would have already been awake for hours, case files spread across a spotless desk. Every minute of my day planned to the second. Now I lingered in moments like this, watching dust motes dance in the light while my daughter slept against my chest. Ellie had her father's eyes and my stubborn chin, a perfect blend of us both. At 18 months, she was already fiercely independent, determined to do everything herself. Lex claimed she got that from me. I reminded him that he was the one who'd survived for years in Milano's world, through sheer force of will. Our apartment occupied the top floor of a renovated brownstone, with high ceilings and space to breathe. Not as utilitarian as my old place, not as threadbare as Lex's former apartment. We'd created something new together, a home that reflected both of us. My book shared shelves with Lex's vinyl records. His boxing trophies stood beside my academy graduation photo. evidence of two lives merged into one. Ellie stirred against me, her small hand curling into my shirt. I adjusted her weight, careful not to wake her. These quiet mornings were precious, a time to reflect on how drastically my life had changed since that first night in the medical room, when I'd treated a fighter with intelligent eyes and a split eyebrow. Outside our living room window, I could see the sign for Second Chance Boxing, Lex's gym across the street. He'd opened it 6 months ago after a year of planning and renovation. The space had once been an abandoned storefront, now transformed into a proper training facility with a regulation-sized ring, heavy bags, and speed bags. The gym wasn't just a business. It was Lex's way of breaking the cycle that had trapped him and so many others. He focused on young alphas from rough backgrounds, teaching them discipline and control along with proper technique. No underground fights, no exploitation, just the sport in its purest form. I smiled, remembering how nervous he'd been on opening day, pacing the apartment and second-guessing every decision. Now the gym had a steady membership, with Lex developing a reputation as a tough but fair trainer who demanded respect, not just for himself, but for his students. My own career transformation had taken longer to materialize. After Reeves fired me, I'd drifted for a while, uncertain of my path forward. Law enforcement had been my identity for so long that I struggled to envision myself doing anything else. The turning point came when I started volunteering at a grief support group. Initially, I went to process my own lingering feelings about Michael's death. But I found something unexpected: a talent for helping others navigate loss. The counselor who ran the group encouraged me to consider it professionally. Next week, I would start classes toward certification as a grief counselor, a way to honor Michael's memory through helping others rather than through vengeance. The thought still felt right, like closing a circle that had been open for too long. Milano and Kenzo were both serving lengthy sentences, the evidence Lex recorded at the meeting, combined with financial records seized during the raid. And my little contribution from Kenzo's year's worth of blackmail material had built an airtight case. Kenzo had tried to bargain for leniency by claiming I had shot Denny, but without evidence and with his credibility shattered, no one took his accusations seriously. That final loose end had stayed tied, allowing us to build our life without looking over our shoulders. The front door opened, and Lex stepped in quietly, spotting me with Ellie on the couch. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that had become more frequent over the past 2 years. He moved with the same primal grace that had first caught my attention at the fights, but the tension that once radiated from him had melted away.
Hey,
He whispered, careful not to wake Ellie as he sat beside us.
she finally crash?
10 minutes ago, fought it the whole way as usual. He chuckled softly.
Wonder where she gets that from.
Both of us, probably. I leaned into his side as his arm came around my shoulders. How's the gym?
Good. That kid I told you about, Marcus? He's got real potential, natural footwork, just needs confidence.
You'll help him find it. Lex nodded, his eyes on our daughter.
It's amazing how fast she's growing.
Too fast, I agreed, watching his gentle expression as he studied her. The feared fighter known as Hammer had become this devoted father who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. He caught me watching him and raised an eyebrow.
What?
Just thinking about how far we've come. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing.
Having second thoughts about any of it?
Not one, I squeezed his hand. You?
Never.
We sat in comfortable silence, the three of us together in the home we'd built from nothing. So different from anything I could have planned or predicted. My entire life had been about control, about forcing order onto chaos. Until Lex. Until I learned that sometimes the most meaningful things come from surrendering that control and trusting the journey. The bond mark on my neck had faded to a silvery scar, still visible, but no longer angry and red like it once was. In the beginning, it had felt like a brand, a physical manifestation of biology overriding choice. Now, it was just one of many connections between us. Important, but no longer defining.
I love you.
Lex said quietly, the words still rare enough from him to make my heart skip. I love you too. As Ellie slept peacefully between us, secure in the absolute certainty of being loved, I thought about fate and choice, about bonds formed and those forged through shared struggle and mutual respect. Maybe it wasn't one or the other. Maybe it was both, working together to lead us exactly where we needed to be. We had built something new together, something neither alpha nor omega, something simply, perfectly human. And that was all that mattered. The end.
I would like to give a special thanks to both patrons and Lunar listeners. Thank you so much for your support. It's all going directly into creating more audio content for your listening pleasure. Lunar listeners receive early access to all audio chapters on YouTube. Patreon members receive early access to uncensored audio chapters, along with full audio shorts too hot for Amazon and YouTube.